Hey everyone, I'm Carlos Abreu from GDG Madeira, and on behalf of the GDG Tech Sessions team, I would like to thank you for being here for another GDG Tech Sessions event, probably the last of this year. We appreciate your support. With these sessions, we intend to keep sharing knowledge about diverse tech topics from speakers around the world and make it available independently of where you are. So feel free to replay and share the previous tech sessions at our YouTube channel. Throughout this year, we've hosted more than 10 events that covered topics as Android security, Web Vitals, Google Data Studio, Apache Beam, and so on. So feel free also to check our previous videos on our YouTube channel. Today, the speaker is Rute Correia. She is the director and the co-founder of at Interruptor, and we'll talk about data journalism. We also have a chance to know a little bit about GDG Lisbon and their community through Philippe Barroso. We hope that you enjoy a lot what we've prepared for you. In order to facilitate the communication between you and the speaker, please use the YouTube live chat. Rute will answer all the questions at the end of this talk. Don't leave all the questions to the end. You can ask them throughout the event. Feel free to do it. I now give the floor to Philippe to talk about GDG Lisbon. Thank you a lot.
Hey, hello. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for having me. I'll be really short. I'm also short, but thankfully I'm sitting down and no one can notice it. So, yeah, GDG Lisbon is just a bit about us. We are active in Lisbon for more than 5 years. Different teams, different people, but always with the same focus of sharing knowledge. And one thing that we really are proud of here in Lisbon is to be different in terms of what content we announce and we offer to the community here in Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. And for the past years, we've been touching in a lot of types of content. We've organized more than 4 big conferences now, yeah, conferences that go 1 day, 3 days even. And for this session, and thinking in the group that we collaborate with, the Women Tech Makers here in Lisbon, we also wanted to bring a different topic, but also a really important topic, in our opinion, that is this talk that Rute is bringing us together today. So I don't want to take much more longer. You can find us online. Just Google for Google Developers Group Lisbon or Lisboa. We are in all social networks, and we want to just let you know that we've been a bit more calm, but 2021 is going to be awesome, and pay attention to our social networks. We will come back in a huge and a large amount of events during. So without any further ado, I would like to pass the word to Rute, and to her talk is rap misogynistic, from data to journalism. Rute, the floor is yours.
Tough word.
Yeah, it is, but I think I handle it. So
yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for watching, and I would like to thank GDG Lisbon for having me, and it's really nice. Before I was the director and the co-founder of Interruptor, and Interruptor is the Portuguese word for light switch or power switch, if you want. I worked in the past 10 years across a range of industries, mainly in radio broadcasting and the music industry, but I also worked in tech, always in a content-based approach. But I worked at Nintendo of Europe and also at Aptoids, so I have one foot here and one foot, one foot in media and one foot in the tech industries. So yeah, is rap misogynistic? Before I dive into the problem of misogyny and rap and so on, I would like to let you know a bit more about Interruptor. We're a very, very small, brand new multimedia magazine. We do data-driven journalism, and data-driven journalism means that we sometimes analyze big chunks of data in a more data science capacity, but always with the journalistic mindset. We don't do current affairs, so you won't find news or reports on what's happening at the current moment. We only do long features and podcasts, and we try to have a multidisciplinary approach. This means that we don't only focus on the journalistic side of things, but we also go a bit outside of the box. We cross academic perspectives, also more documentary related types of things. And we have a very, very huge connection with the free software movement, and we publish open source code. This is very important to us. I can't say that we are 100% open source. Sadly, we're not at that stage. But all the code that we develop for our articles is shared on GitHub. And we also took part in Hacktoberfest 2020. And it was a very special event for us because we were able to connect multiple open source communities here in Portugal. So Ubuntu Portugal, Python Portugal, Flutter, and Wikimedia. All these different communities got together, and we developed a map of the cultural facilities in Portugal, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. To wait, I pressed wrong buttons. Very proud of doing, which is to connect these different communities, and yeah, all this work is available on GitHub, like I said. And whenever we develop code for our articles, we share it. So all the things that you're going to hear about today, they are on GitHub at Interruptor PT. So what does data-driven mean? I'm going to give you just a small sample of some data-driven articles that we did. As I said before, we're very, very new. We launched in September, so we don't have a huge catalog of things yet, but we already have some data-driven works published. The first one is called "Can an Algorithm Tell the Difference Between Fernando Pessoa's Pseudonyms?" Fernando Pessoa is one of Portugal's most important poets. He's an early 20th century poet. And one of the things that really is really interesting about his work is that he wrote under a lot of pseudonyms, and every pseudonym has a different writing style, and you can identify it. So the challenge was to see if a machine could identify it. For this particular work, we looked into previous experiences. So some researchers had already done some experiments around this issue. Nothing very, I would say that none of the experiments were very intense. Actually, it's quite obvious that an algorithm can tell the difference between pseudonyms, but we used a different approach. Instead of using SVMs, which was what other people had tried before, we used topic modeling techniques. So for those who are a bit less technical, this is natural language processing techniques. And so yeah, we use things that are a bit more into data science scope as a tool to produce our journalistic work. On this, are we listening to more Portuguese music? It was a more descriptive statistics type of work where we analyzed 16 years of album charts. I don't think anyone had ever done anything like this in Portugal. It was actually a bit hard to get the data because it's hidden in a weird Switzerland website, but it's the only place that had a backlog of these charts. And so we scraped them and we analyzed them to see if we were listening to more Portuguese music more recently. And our latest data driven piece is called Is Rap Misogynistic? I think it's very clear to see that all these titles, these are the titles, by the way, and they're always questions. So we use data to try to answer these questions. Yeah. So when I was preparing this presentation, I was a bit concerned about this is a Google developers group, and I wanted to highlight some of the technical things that we did, but I wouldn't say that the technical part of we did was very hard, and so and a lot of the things that we did or we chose to do or not do in some cases were really driven by the editorial side of things, and so this is going to be kind of a hybrid a hybrid presentation. I'm going to show some of the technical parts behind it, and I'm going to try to go through the process through the technical process of what we did. But I would also like to share with you some of our concerns and the editorial aspect of things. And the first concern was what is the story behind this? Is rap misogynistic? At this point, I should tell you that I had this idea for a really long time. And in fact, this may seem a bit crazy, but I quit my job in January to go learn how to code to do this particular work. I wanted to quantify misogyny in rap music. I'm a big rap fan, big hip hop fan. I've been writing about hip hop for about 10 years now, but it was very clear to me that there was an issue with misogyny in the language of rap music. So not necessarily in rap itself, but more about how rap expresses itself. And yeah, so the first concern was a very journalistic thing, which is what is the story? Were we just trying to do a ranking of misogyny in rap? Were we? How are we going to frame this type of things? What are we going to do? How are we going to, analyze these things? And this piece is heavily inspired by previous works done at this website called The Pudding. They do visual essays and they explored hip hop music with data-driven analysis, where, for instance, they did not really I'm going to call it a ranking. It's not quite a ranking, but they compared the richness of vocabulary of dozens of rappers, and so you can see how many unique words Drake uses in comparison to Kanye West or Eminem or or basically any American rapper that you can think of. And so, yeah, these concerns of what is the story was really what helped us build the rest of the article. And how do we frame it? So we picked the 25th of November to launch this article because it was the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And violence against women is a very serious topic. And we wanted to use the piece as as a staple of cultural pieces, and how language, or how the normalization of violent language towards women helps to replicate this gendered violence. But we also had some ethical concerns, like was it fair for rappers that we did this, and like we're gonna label them as misogynist or not misogynist? What does this mean in how we portray rap music? Because rap music is not misogynistic per se. It's a lot of things. Some songs are misogynistic, but there are also lots of songs that are empowering, and they really challenge social issues like racism and poverty and social segregation, etc. And so we had these concerns throughout the piece, and in the end, we made most of the decisions we made in the way we handled data were based on these concerns. So the first thing that became very, very obvious was that we needed a very strong context to deliver the piece. And so it's not just, it's not just charts, and it's mostly text, the piece actually. It's more than 3,000 words. And for you to have an idea of how much that is, it's about 10 pages. 10 A4 pages. So we talked to 2 female rappers about their experiences within rap music in Portugal. And we also talked to a specialist in gender violence from our National Research Observatory of Gender Violence. And talking to them really helped us then tailor the approach of the article. So the big challenge was obviously, how can we quantify misogyny? And the very initial idea of the article was to do a ranking of misogyny. But as we progressed and as we talked to more people and read more books about hip hop and read more lyrics and listened to more hip hop, etc., it became very obvious that um, building a ranking would be a wrong approach. I mean, it would be very easy and probably get even more views if we wrote something like, we found the most misogynistic rapper in Portugal. Click here to find out who he is. But in the end, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to illustrate how misogyny language prevails, or there is a normalization of misogynistic language within the context of hip hop, and that's very, very different. So we still have to quantify it, but how do we do it, and how do we build the context for that, in the sense that, for instance, not all swear words have the same level of rudeness and of offensiveness, let's call it like this. um, and yeah, in this point, we are trying to figure out how can we quantify it. The idea became very clear from the beginning that the best way to do it would be to analyze as many lyrics as possible, as many rap lyrics as possible. Let's put it like this, and check, for instance, for misogynistic terms. So it was a kind of a basic approach in terms of word frequency. But the first real technical, well, it wasn't a technical challenge, but when we started looking at data, the first thing that we noticed, maybe we need to filter some of the rappers in and out of the selection. So which artists are we going to look at? So initially, we just started building a list of any Portuguese rapper that we could think of any time period that we could think of, and just started listing. And as we as the list grew and grew, and at some point it was nearly 60 rappers, I think, it became clear that we couldn't analyze them all. And in fact, not that they weren't worthy of the analysis, but more in the sense that it didn't make sense to analyze them all. We had to look for relevance, and our relevance, like we actually only closed this relevant, let's call it the relevance criteria, after we started working on the data, and we filtered out some of the rappers at the very, very final stage. But yeah, so these were the criteria that we ended up going with. So they had to rap mainly in Portuguese. This seems like an obvious one, but there are lots of rappers in Portugal that sing in Cape Verdean Creole, and so those had to be out of the count. And relevance is also clear when they have published at least one album. They had to have at least 5,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and then at least 10 lyrics available on Genius. And this one, it was a really, really hard one to do, but they had, in this last item is only applies to rappers that had a long repertoire, but they'd have to have at least 60 to 70% of their lyrical work on Genius. This meant that some rappers that have quite extensive works, and older, rappers that started rapping in previous decades mostly, and that are quite important, are not on this work. And this was because maybe they have a few of their most recent songs on Genius, but the older songs are not there. And we felt like it wasn't fair to analyze their work if most of them is missing from the cut. So in the end, we looked into a total of 1,127 songs by 40 rappers. Data-wise, and in terms of like technical work, it wasn't, I can't say that it was very hard. Our stack was also very basic. We use Python. It's what I know. It's the not. I mean, we don't pick Python for any particular reason. It just happens to be the programming language that I know. And I use Jupyter notebooks. And the first step was obviously to scrape the lyrics from Genius. And for that, we used a Python client or a Python library that serves, that lets you access Genius's API and save the lyrics. So we had our rappers list, and then we just scraped it. I had used this library before, this Lyrics Genius app library, and it had worked very well. But for some reason, when we were scraping the data for this work, it wasn't working as well as the previous time I used it. And so we actually had to scrape it a lot of times. I mean, I don't know how many times I scraped data. I scraped the lyrics, but it was a lot, at least 10, 15 times, because sometimes some lyrics were missing, and that was obviously problematic for the work. And then we then just we fetched all the JSON, so a JSON per artist, JSON file per artist, and we repackaged that into a pandas data frame that has all the information that we were looking for. So the information that we were looking for was name, name of the artist, title of the song, lyrics, and I think that's it. We had other stuff that was useful for checking data, but these were the main important, the most important ones. Then is, how do we create a score? So this was I'm going to say the second part of the work, but actually this had to be established even before the artist list, which was, how do we actually quantify it? And to quantify misogyny, we used a dictionary that had been compiled by Universidade do Minho, their local university. So we didn't really build our own score. We didn't classify the words as misogynist or We didn't classify the words as rude or anything. We used a dictionary that was already compiled by specialists and that this university makes available on via a natural language processing research project that they have. And yeah, they make this dictionary available in Perl, which initially was quite problematic for me because I don't know Perl. But they also have an HTML version, and so we used Beautiful Soup, so a Python library to handle HTML to navigate through this dictionary, and we created our own dictionary data frame. So one of the things that this dictionary has that was probably the key part of the whole project is that it has a scale of rudeness, let's call it like this. So as you see on the chart on the left, so it has like colloquial slang, rude slang, very rude slang, and then extremely rude slang. And so using this dictionary, we had an actual scale of slang. So we solved one of the problems of quantifying misogyny. And so what we did was using these different levels of rudeness, we created a point scale. So if there was a colloquial word in a lyric, it gives 1 point to that song or their artist. If it's super rude, then it's 5 points, and we just counted it up. At this point, we also, when we were cleaning, let's call it the dictionary, and turning that dictionary into something that we could use, we also decided to filter out some terms that we felt that would skew our sample. So terms that were too common, we just filtered them out. There was also one specific term that is considered slang in Brazilian Portuguese, but not in European Portuguese, and we also filtered it out. And then we created a list of swear words using the dictionary, and at this point we filtered out the misogynistic swear words. So what are the misogynistic swear words? What makes something misogynistic? One was very obvious, so any insult to women is misogynist. So that was very easy. But then we realized, as we started looking into the lyrics more in depth and really just reading these hundreds and hundreds of lyrics, was that in most cases, whenever there are references that use slang to refer to anal sex and to oral sex, these tend to be misogynistic. The same with genitalia. And so in the end, our list of misogynistic swear words includes genitalia, oral and anal sex, and any derogatory terms towards women. And yeah, so to build the score, it was a fairly simple process, technically wise, let's call it like this. It involves some text processing and word counting. We removed the stop words from the lyrics. We tokenized the lyrics. And we also tokenized the dictionary, and then we matched the tokens and added the score. So like I said before, so if you have a word like whore, and let's say whore has a 3 in the scale of swearing, then it's 3 points. If it gets repeated, those points add up. Because obviously, if you keep repeating a misogynistic term, then it's more misogynist than if you only use it once. Yeah. So once we've done all this, we had a really interesting amount of data. And as we progressed, it became more and more obvious that the biggest challenge in terms of editorial choices was the data visualization. So what type of approach do we want just a chart with the ranking? At some point, we actually considered sharing a searchable database where people could search for the songs or their favorite artists and see what swear words were being used for a specific song. But in the end, our goal wasn't really to name and shame. It was our focus was the woman as a victim of gender violence. And so we thought that the name and shame approach or a clickbaity approach would deter from the goal of the article, which was to highlight that there is an issue of normalization of violence within the language of hip hop. But we thought that, you know, the name and shame approach could probably distract the readers from the main message of the article. And so in the end, we chose, we did just two basic charts. This one is just, you know, just a donut chart. On the left, you have the most used terms in slang. And this is an interactive chart, but on the presentation is just an image. So if you go on the website, the chart is actually interactive, so you can filter out terms and see how much they're used. So these are the most common terms used in slang on the left and of misogynist slang on the right. We only included terms that appear more than 10 times, so it's still a low count, but still. And if you look on the left, on the right, and there's this huge beige slice is the word puta, which is a very offensive word. It's pretty much the most offensive word that you can use against a woman in Portuguese language. It's a synonym for whore, and it is really, really offensive. Sorry, someone is ringing the bell next to us. And we actually found out that for every 6 songs, for every 6 rap songs, the word puta appears once, which is really, I think this number really illustrates how deeply rooted misogyny is within rap. It's also important to say that even though we didn't publish this, we obviously correlated the usage of slang with with the usage of misogynistic slang, and the score was around 0.6, which denotes a positive correlation. So the more slang you use, the more likely, or the more slang a rapper uses, the more likely he is to use misogynist slang. But that wasn't, but it's not as high as one would think. So there are rappers that use misogynistic slang a lot more than, or not a lot more, but how can I put this? So even though the correlation is positive, it's actually not as strong, like the usage of slang and misogynistic slang is not as strongly correlated as you'd think. And then we did a spider chart with the misogynistic and slang scores by rapper. So basically, calão is slang, so, and misogyny is misogyny. So you could explore by artist what their max scores were and what the average slang score was. Here on the picture you have Sheg, which is the rapper that had the most misogynistic song, which is very, very misogynistic. But yeah, we let people explore the data that we cleaned and tidied and found in a more interactive way. And really, it's the choice for the spider chart was that we wanted to let people have a more visual sense of these scores, and we wanted them to be able to compare, but to compare between rappers, but we didn't really we felt like it didn't make sense to put the scores side by side. We tested scatter plots and we tested a bunch of different visualizations, but we thought that this one was the one that illustrated better how each rapper uses slang or misogynistic slang. The reactions were pretty good overall, and I can tell you that even though we're not yeah, we're quite a recent media in Portugal, and so our page views are not particularly extraordinary. But yeah, this article really, really became our most read article. It was huge. We had in just a day we had about 5,000 unique visitors and a few more thousand page views, which is a lot for us. We're very small, very new. And on the screen, you have a tweet by one of the rappers that says that he was sent the article about hip hop, about misogyny in hip hop, in which Corona, and Corona is a character. So it's a character that he created as a, you know, almost like a satirical type of a character that does hip hop, and it had a very and they appear on the top 10 of most misogynistic rappers, let's put it like this. And he says that even though Corona is a character, he regrets using these type of slurs and swears and misogynist terms, and he will not do it in the future. Other rappers weren't as I'm gonna say as explicit as David Bruno, but overall I'd say that reactions were pretty positive, and I think the message was passed, I'd say. So I think this is the time for questions. You can read, the article is obviously in Portuguese. You can read it on Interruptor's website, interruptor.pt. You can find Interruptor on pretty much every social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also on GitHub with that at Interruptor.pt. And I'm Rute Radio, so thank you for watching, and I hope this was interesting for you.
Thank you, Rute. Thank you. It's a really important presentation and really well thought of and worked on. So, without any further, let's just see the questions of the community. So, what was the most unexpected common insult you found?
The most unexpected common insult. We realized, for instance, when we were analyzing that it's not an insult, but for instance, we the first few rounds we had the word tipo, which can be a dude, but it can also be just like, and it was a word that was being counted endless times, and we had to filter it out because we felt like it didn't make any sense. The most common insults was definitely puta, which is whore. Very offensive term for a woman. I'd say, as a woman, I'd say it's probably the most offensive thing that you can call or can use as an insult. But we had other things like vaca and cabra were pretty common. One of the things that we didn't do, and it was a shame because the dictionary was very, very rich. And not only it had words, but it also had expressions. And we didn't search for those expressions. We really just searched for the words. On the dictionary, there were pretty heavy insults, and most of them involving moms, and insulting moms. So again, you're insulting women, because a mother is always a woman. I'd say that these were the most common ones.
Okay, so we have two more questions. So, was there any misogynistic reaction to the article?
There were quite a few reactions, kind of minimizing the article, and there were the obvious reactions of we don't like someone is asking if rap is misogynistic. Of course it's not. And or how a term, like using a specific term, doesn't mean that someone is misogynist. But we actually explain all those things in the article. So we try to make very clear that context was the most important thing. So even if you have, and this happened with one of the songs, that like it had the word puta quite a few times, but it wasn't the fact that was that it wasn't used in a misogynistic context. It was used as like a discourse, as a speech tool. It was like saying, "Oh, put the fucking camera down," but instead of fucking, it was puta, because Portuguese language works like that. So it wasn't being used in a misogynistic manner, but the fact that it was used so many times, we thought that it was interesting to highlight it as well, in the sense that it it really highlights the normalization of using these terms, even in other contexts. And that was something very interesting, which we wouldn't really think of. But then after talking to specialists, and we talked to the researcher, and she actually said that she was saying something along the lines that when we talk about music or cinema, but especially music, because music has very repetitive patterns. And so if you listen to a song and it's catchy, you have the tendency to repeat it. And as you repeat something, you're actually normalizing. And so even if you're not doing it in a misogynistic manner, you act like, it's almost like subconsciously you're accepting that using those terms is okay. And that was an interesting find. But we really tried to, uh, you know, to the biggest extent possible, to really contextualize all these things, and avoid the name and shame. Even though we did like a small table with the biggest misogynistic scores by number of unique words and by number of songs that each rapper had, and the scores was slightly different. But yeah, we really tried to highlight that, using a swear word is obviously not misogynistic per se, or but there are certain words, and specifically those that are derogatory towards women, that if you normalize its usage, then you are in a way normalizing misogyny.
So you have quite a fan. It's not a normal fan. It's a podcast Ubuntu in Portugal that has a lot of questions.
Yes.
But one more question. We have time for all the questions. So next question. So besides hip hop, was there any other type of music you considered studying?
For this specific work, no. Although in the introduction we mentioned popular music, as in like pimba music, which is Portuguese folk pop songs. I don't know.
The best songs.
In which misogyny is very present as well, but it's also a lot. Well, for instance, we couldn't use this. We couldn't use this type of score to do that because it's not. It's misogyny is rooted in metaphors and wordplay, and it's not as we couldn't build it just with the word frequency, matching items and matching words and counting them. We would really have to go a lot deeper. But it's there is this article, I don't know where it is, but I find it very illustrative of the problem of misogyny in music that goes way beyond rap, which is it was something along the lines like 6 songs that are misogynist and we don't really notice, and 1 that isn't, but everybody thinks it is. And I don't remember the songs that were misogynist, but I remember the one that isn't, but everybody thinks it is, which is Candy Shop by 50 Cent. Now, Candy Shop would probably score very high in this article, for instance, if we used a similar approach. But the premise of the song is all based on consent. So, like, he says something along the lines like, we can have it your way. How do you want it? We can do this if you like it, or I can do something else if you prefer. So it's all about consent. So even though it's very explicit, there is this consent part that makes the whole difference. And so Candy Shop, in a way, it's actually a very sexually empowering song to a woman because it's all based on a consensual relationship, which is very different than saying I'm going to do this to you and do that, and the woman is not heard. Let's put it like this. But yeah, I would like to do it with other music genres, but it would have to be with a very different approach.
Maybe in the future with a better data set. So next question. Is there any decrease of misogynistic speech through the time? Any trends? What's the trend?
We actually tried to do one of the things that we wanted to have done, and in the end we didn't do, was a timeline of misogyny, and we didn't do because we felt like we didn't have enough data to build it. So a lot of the songs were missing release dates, and yeah, we couldn't really tell if there was any trend of decrease or increase. I can tell you that the most misogynistic rapper that we found, and it's the most misogynistic by number of words and by number of songs. He is a current rapper, so it's a rapper of the nowadays. The most misogynistic song is a song that is 20 years old. So I'm not sure I can give an answer. I can't say whether it has increased or decreased. We wanted to have done that, but we were missing the data to do so.
But with time, you'll have the data. So we still have at least one more question. So did you present these results to local associations that defend gender equality? Did you approach them? Did they approach you?
Not directly, I would say. We approached the National Observatory for Gender Violence when we were producing the piece. But we haven't really shared the article specifically with local feminist groups. It's something that is actually I would like to do in the future, because I think that's very important work to help them validate their work.
Definitely. If the community still thinks of more questions, at least I have one for you.
Okay.
So can you give us a sneak peek of future works, some ideas you might go on, Can you talk about a bit of that? Because this was really interesting. What else are you preparing for us?
Um, Actually, we have a lot of ideas, and one of the things that we found out in these 3 months is that very often the ideas that we have are a bit harder to put into a place than we initially planned. So, and yeah, this article was something that had been in the works somehow, or being imagined for a long time, and then when we actually did it, it came out in a very different manner than we initially envisioned. I can tell that we're planning to do works around comedy, for instance, so look into the work of comedians. um, and my because my background is in music, I'm very music orientated, so probably there will be more music featured. I can tell you that we will be doing another feature for the Are We Listening to More Portuguese Music series. So that's a series. We had, on top of the descriptive statistics of chart analysis, we also did a historic background. We built a detailed background of how Portuguese music gains space in Portuguese media, because in the 90s it didn't have a lot of space, and that changed, and why and how it changed. So we did that historical work, which is not very data driven, but it required a lot of research. But yeah, we will be doing another piece on that series. Not sure when it's going to come out, probably early 2021. And yeah, I think that like data driven type of things. Also, we also want to do stuff with literature and with cinema, but I can't say a lot more at the minute, at the risk of saying
Oh, good.
something that won't turn out to be true.
No, it's also because you mentioned and you reinforce the open source community. So maybe people can pay attention to your work. Maybe they can help out with their time and help out with many research. I don't know. Is that something you are open to? With the work on the Oktoberfest, do you plan into, does not you, but in the Interruptor PT has a plan to open and have a collaborative research open source something? Anything of
Um,
that?
we would like to contribute more to the open source community. Um, for instance, I can say, for instance, that today we published the final chapter of How Far Does Culture Reach, which features the map that was produced during Hacktoberfest. And that map is not Interruptors, is Interruptors community, is the people that contributed to the map. And that's very important to us. Um, we would like to maybe do more events around open source, maybe not necessarily as intense as the Hacktoberfest hackathon, which was quite intense. But yes, we would like to keep releasing code. The code that we have released so far has been more on the data analysis part. So it's on that thin line. I mean, it is code, but it's hard to say that it's software, for instance. But yeah, with time we would like to keep contributing, and we this is one of our main commitments. Any time that we develop code for an article, we publish it. Other things that might happen in the future is that we release source code for other things that we do, maybe on the website, and stuff like that. We have been trying to really improve the user experience with small technical improvements, like we have a book read, like a bookmark for when you read the articles. So our articles are very long, but you don't have to read them all in one go. You can bookmark where you were and just come back later. And all these things maybe in the future might be released as open source. overall, we have this commitment with open source and open code, and try to be as transparent as possible. Like I said in the beginning, we're not 100% open source, sadly, but it just wasn't possible for our structure with just a very, very small team. But yeah, it's part of our commitment, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you, and we will definitely pay attention to Twitter. Thank you so much for your talk. Let's call Carlo into here and to close the session. And again, Carlos, thank you for having me. Ruth, thank you for accepting this challenge and your awesome presentation. And that's all from me. Good night.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Ruth, for being here with us. It was a wonderful presentation that allowed us to understand a little bit more about Portuguese rap and the misogynistic, and understand the impact that our music have in our culture. So thank you again, Ruth and Philippe, for this presentation. Don't forget that your community can also propose a tech session. Just fill this form and we will contact you to get all the things ready. And of course, just wrapping up the session, just follow us on our social media to get updated about the last news. Just want to thank again to Philippe and Ruth to make this initiative possible. I mean, this event possible, and of course, all the elements of our team that allow this initiative to keep alive. So thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoyed a lot and hope to see you soon. Goodbye and have happy Christmas and a happy New Year. See you next year.